Hello. Uh, yeah. Hi. Hello, Upward Pain. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see you here. Um, yeah, this is going to be a shorter stream in general, as it's going to be every Monday from now on for a while, because I got stuff happening. What the? 15 streams? Wow. That is amazing. Holy heck, thank you so much. And congrats on the 15 streams. That is wow. I don't even know what to say to that. Um, s- that's dedication. Definitely. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Um, let me get some music. What are we feeling like today? Maybe some of this. Okay. Um, yeah. So my Mondays are packed right now. I have like 4 hours of choir practice in the evening, and then I have 2 hours of class before that. So that doesn't leave a lot of time left um to be streaming. Which is why I moved the creative stuff to Monday because those streams tend to be slightly shorter anyway, and then do the longer Baldur's Gate sessions on Thursday where I have more time. Otherwise, I will be stuck on that game for 3 years, and I don't think I can do that. All right. Let me. I forgot once again to make a live post. I also have chores to do. There's a couple of things I need to do. I may have to like during the ad breaks. I may have to go do some of them. Stuck on the game until BG4 is out. Oh no. Finishing BG2 and be like, now that Baldur's Gate 4 is out, let's check out what Baldur's Gate 3 was. Ah. So I don't think either Baldur's Gate 4 is not gonna happen, or it's going to be such a crap product that it completely tarnishes the name. Oh, hey, Lee. Hi, hi. How goes? Nice to have you. Open Twitch just in time. Very, very serendipitous. Right. I wanted to make a go live post. Hold on. Uh, discussion. Can establish Twitch TV. Okay. Um, always great catching streams. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, and Blue Sky is being messy again. It's not accepting my. So Blue Sky does this weird thing where sometimes the embeds just don't properly connect. Right? It's like you try to do an embed to Twitch and then it just gives you Twitch itself, not your channel, right? Um and then you have to finagle the website and be like, no, 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 you need to reconnect and please show my channel instead of just twitch.tv, the basic one. And it's not working. Um, hmm, that kind of sucks. Nope. Okay, the embed seems to be broken. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's annoying mostly. Like it used to be if you then remove the embed and re-put the link into there to generate a new embed, it would fix it. And now, hold on, the music is a little bit loud. Okay. Um, and now that
Stay a
didn't.
while and listen.
Whoa. Okay. Uh, thanks. That's a lot of things happening at once. Okay. Thank you for the subscription. You got the double decker. Yes. I don't know what happened there. Both alerts. I have two. Wait. Why did both alerts trigger? That is so weird. Oh, because the stream elements triggered. Stream elements one also triggered. Ah. Right. Yeah, but thank you so much for the sub. Yeah, and then I saw, wait, why did both alerts go off? Okay. What was I talking about? The embeds, right? So you used to be able to fix it by just removing the embed, repasting the link to force it to embed again, and then it would fix itself. Then that stopped working, so what you had to do is you had to just copy your post text, completely reload Blue Sky, like the website, refresh the web page, and then create a new post, and that would fix it. And now it doesn't. So yeah. Okay. But yes, thank you for that. Wouldn't be a VTuber stream without a little scuff? Yes. Definitely. That's the whole point of VTubing, right? There's two reasons why we VTube. The first reason is so that we can get all of the scuff, and the second reason is so that we don't have to wear pants. Um and that's it. That's the magic of VTubing. So yeah. I hopefully found all of the like stream element alerts thing. I want to get rid of them fully. But it seems like I forgot to turn them off. I've deleted them on stream elements themselves. Like but apparently I forgot that one or that one didn't register. I don't know. Wearing a dress also means you don't have to wear pants. True. True. But then wearing a dress is usually to show off, I guess, maybe. Skirt or kilt? Yes, very good points. No scuff related to IR setup prep, all the scuff related to technical issues. Exactly. Long skirt? Hmm. What is that? Is there a Wait, it's just called a long skirt, isn't it? There's no specific name for that kind of garment. Because like a full length maxi skirt, yeah, that like goes down to your ankles or such. Because I keep getting confused with these terms sometimes because in German you have a word for skirt, but that specifically only refers to short skirts. There's a different word for longer skirts that reach like above your knees maybe or down to your lower legs. Um I think. Anyway, it's confusing. Pencil skirts are usually the tighter, longer ones too. Tons of styles and types. Yeah. Like, oh my god, there's so much. So many fashion terms. And then people are like, oh no, I forgot to bring my cardigan. And it's like, what the heck is a cardigan? What black magic is this? Why? Why is cardigan? Um yeah, language. So when I teach it, it's like, yeah, it refers to this kind of thing. You can translate it, but only to this kind, and so on, and not that kind. And it's what I want to do at some point, if I have the time and the mind space for it, is, and also as kind of a take that. Oh, just real quick, you'd never need, if you ever need a clarification with fashion, you can always let me know. Yes, yes. Uh I am interested, and it's like when I think about things like character design, which is something I am fascinated with. It's not like, oh, I definitely I want to become a character designer, that kind of deal. But it's always like, if I want to design a character for a game or RPG or whatever, it's like, I don't know what people wear. I only know t-shirt, jeans, and that's it. Like, what is there? Right? What kind of clothes exist? Um, and yeah, and that's kind of what happens. So yes, I will see if I, like, by now I know what a cardigan is, I think, maybe. Right? Because that happened years ago and I had time to check it out in the meantime. But there's always things that surprise me in fashion, and it's like, oh, there's this thing. Or I see someone wearing something like that looks really pretty, or oh my god, that looks really cool. What is that? Right? And then it has a very specific name, but I don't know what it is, and then I can never find it again because I see it in a picture or something, and the picture doesn't have the name of the clothing item, and then I can never find the clothing item again. Um, always like studying, designing fashion in my free time. That is so awesome. Um, of all my characters, wore Dragon Ball clothes for so many years. Yeah, I mean, why not, right? It's very very straightforward. It's actually, um, looking back at it, I think a couple of friends kind of noticed that something was up with me. Uh, when it came to like fashion, and what happened was, this was years ago. I don't even remember how long, probably 10 years or something. Um, back in the heyday of Girls' Generation, the K-pop band, when they were like, when they took over the world, basically. And I was like, oh hey, I really like their music. I want to learn Korean now. And I actually did. IOGG, yes, exactly. I used to not dress well at all. Let's just say society made it so I really had to put effort into it. Ah, that sucks that that was the reason. But if that did eventually lead to like an interest and a hobby, then I guess something good came out of it. Um, but yeah, Girls' Generation, which was during the time when I was doing my master's thesis and such, like I would just not write and sit there listening and watching their videos. And there was one video, one music video that they did. Um, I've now completely forgotten the name of. Uh, holy heck, I completely forgot the name of that song. Is it The Boys? Yeah, it has the colorful jeans. It's The Boys. Okay, I still remember. Right. So, was streetwear. But there was a segment before that where they also wore like these really beautiful dresses. Right? So that there was this contrast between, in the opening segment and then in the closing segment there were these really beautiful dresses, I think. Yeah, and then in the actual dancing parts they wore streetwear. And when I saw those dresses, I was like, "Holy heck, those are so beautiful! Oh my goodness!" Um, and I was thinking like, "Oh my god, why didn't I learn fashion? Right? Why I want to like learn about dresses like this. I want to learn about this." And then I was describing that to a couple of friends. I was showing them the video, saying like, "Look at these dresses, they're so pretty." Blah, blah. And then both of them looked at me really weirdly. It's like, is there something going on here? Um, and that was something like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years before I realized, hold on, yeah, there is something going on. Um, but yeah, that was, thinking back, that was another clue. Um, wait, is there? I'm talking about me being non-binary, right? So they were both, they kind of sort of went like, hold on, is there is there something? Right. Not like in a malicious way, but more like in a, this, because like they're both like, I don't think I've told them yet, because not because of like I'm afraid or something, but like I just haven't had any contact with them lately. Um, but like I know for a fact that they wouldn't be like appalled or anything along those lines, right? So so when they were both like, wait a minute, it was more like a curious, there seem to be some signs. Um I mean, regardless, dress and skirts are pretty good for everyone's anatomy. Yeah. Were you like egg? Or probably, right? Probably. Way before I realized. And comfortable. Yeah, I can imagine. Um, but I have a lot of like other hangups of trying it out from my socialization. So that's a whole can of worms right there. Um yeah, it's eh. And also nowadays I'm more like, yeah, I'm agender. So we don't do gender expression. Um that's that's a big hang up that I have currently. Maybe I'll get over it at some point. Who knows? Um so a lot of people caught me all way before I even knew. I mean, the thing with my environment, I think, is uh a lot of the people I hung out with in earlier in my life uh were even less informed and less open to the subject than I was. Um so it wasn't until I was doing my masters that I started meeting friends who were in the correct mind space to think of something like that, right? And by that point I was on my way to figuring out it's myself. So um it's weird how people always seem to figure out things like before you do. um yeah, it's very often because I think it's just the behavioral signs are there. So this is very interesting. The reason it took me this long, and it took me something like a whole year or more of like actively searching, actively questioning, uh, was because you only really get the perspective from one side. Oh, okay. I was wondering where the music went, but it's okay. It's still playing. It's just very quiet. Right, and so my experience was basically, okay. This is now a completely different topic, but my experience was basically, um, I hung around a lot on like, so I joined like the LGBTQ subreddit just to be like, oh yeah, I want to know what like what that is like, what people's lives are like, right? Outside of my, back then, outside of my personal lived experience. Right. I also joined like the deaf subreddit and such just to be like, oh, what is life like for deaf people? What do they talk about? What do they complain about in daily life? Or maybe I can learn a thing or two. Um, right, and such. So I joined the LGBTQ Reddit, um and read a lot in there about, oh yeah, people's lives, and a lot about trans people as well. Um and then a lot of times people were like, oh yeah, if this and this happens, it means you're trans, or like, oh yeah, this is how I discovered I was trans and things. And then the more I started reading, the more I was like, wait a second, I I can like what's the word? I had some of those things, right? I can check off some of the things on my personal checklist. Um, I mean, I think it's also a point that you don't have the experience of anyone else besides yourself. Yes, that's a big deal. Your normal isn't someone else's normal, so are you supposed to know if you're different? Yeah, exactly. So when other people see, oh, you stick out, empathize. I guess empathize, is that the word? Maybe even sympathize. I can sympathize with that. Probably a better word. Um, right, and be like, yeah, no, that's weird. Um, I I totally have those things as well. What does that mean? And the problem is the and this is like a societal problem, like yeah, patriarchy, all that is basically you only hear about these things from the trans side of things, being like, oh yeah, I went through these experiences and they showed me that I was actually trans, right? Because I then realized, oh yeah, you don't have these experiences as a cis person. But then from the cis side of things, you never get like, oh yeah, no, this is my experience that made me realize I'm cis, right? That doesn't exist. That's just not a thing, right? Or I went through these experiences that made me realize I'm not trans, or even things like that, right? It's like there's no such thing. So I don't know where the endpoints of the spectrum are, right? So I have like one end is cis, one end is trans, right? Essentially, right? Back then, I was still thinking, oh yeah, non-binary might be somewhere in the middle, blah, whatever. Um, it's a bit more complex than just that, but just for simplification's sake, right? And then I don't know where I'm standing on this spectrum, right? How long is it? If I have these experiences that trans people are describing they have, does it mean I'm basically almost on that end of the spectrum, very far away from the cis point? Or does that mean I'm actually still very close to the cis point and cis end of the spectrum, and it's just, I can I recognize some of the things that trans people go through. Um like how much I cannot compare both sides because I only have information on one side, right? And bleh, that really sucks. Um that's why it took me so long. And yeah. But once I realized what was happening, it's like, oh yeah, no, actually this is pretty clear. Actually, right, this is there's a lot that's that makes sense now. I get it. Okay, good. Then I hold on. Hold on. I'm doing something else in the meantime. I shouldn't be doing this. Um, that means at least it made sense to a certain degree. Okay. Um, but yeah, how do we get here? Fashion. Uh, um, wow, we walked through a couple of topics there. Oh my goodness. Started actually thinking about it when the pandemic hit and I was working from home for months on end pretty much by myself and got to thinking, yeah, I think that also that's why there was such a huge spike, right, in like trans people or non-binary people and such discovering themselves during the pandemic because suddenly they hung out online, and online there's a lot of like trans people or queer people more willing to talk about this stuff. um So then you get exposed to these perspectives and experiences, and yeah, and that really helped a lot of people realize, hold on, there's something going on here. Um, the train of conversation went way off course. It really did. It really did. Very fitting, however, for talking about RPGs. Um, this, by the way, is how you plan out your RPGs. By not planning them out, you just let things happen. Right? You just let the conversation flow, and then things happen, and there is no such thing as off the rails. There shouldn't be such a thing as off the rails in an RPG. I'm trying to wrangle it back to the topic that we're here for today. um, but yeah, how do we even get no, not wearing pants, right? I am wearing some right now, but that's not the point. Yeah, okay. So, I think but I think this topic is exhausted for now. So, being a VTuber means not worrying about pants. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh right. It's I don't have to wear pants. Okay, let me go Krita here. Do we get it? Okay. Boop. And then we started talking about fashion and girls' generation, right? And such. Ah, okay. Um, what is the hotkey for? Oh, it was just about to show me. Okay. Yeah. So speaking of off the rails and RPGs, um, I wanted to do some design. Like I said, I don't have a lot of time today, so I have to go at. I have a lesson at 3:30 p.m. Um, but I do need to eat something before that. Um, so I will have to go at something like 2:30 ish, maybe, which is in about 3 hours. Um, yeah, and then I need food, and then after that, it's full on. I have 2 hours of lesson, and then I need to rush out to choir practice, and then I have 4 hours of choir practice all the way until like 10 p.m. Um, yeah, it's Mondays are gonna well, not suck, but they're gonna be cramped. Um, yeah. So let's do this. Social checks. So RPGs. Um, there's a lot about RPGs in general that I want to talk about, but I have to limit myself otherwise. Or maybe we will find something interesting while discussing all this. Anyway, social checks. So, um, what do I mean by that? Uh, so I can totally go. Oh my god, that's a horrible line. A better line. That's a slightly worse line. Okay, so I need to sort my thoughts because I don't know where to enter the thought stream right now. Um, what I mean by social checks is essentially rolling skill checks and such. The music is still a bit loud and a bit distracting. Okay. Um, is rolling social skill checks or skill checks during social situations, right? So as far as I can see right now from my own play experience, from watching actual plays and discussions and such, we tend to get two camps when it comes to social checks. You essentially get the almighty skill check, which is basically uh you want to, I don't know, persuade the guard to do something, right? Persuade the guard to look the other way and let you through, or persuade the merchant to lower their prices or whatever, right? And then you just talk. It's like, I want to persuade this person to do this. I want to persuade this guard to let me through. And then you just roll your check, and if you get high enough, then it's like, okay, done. Boom, you persuade the guard. Um, which is one side. I'm not saying this side is wrong, right? I'm just describing that's what it amounts to. And it treats the social skills just like any other skill check, right? It's like, oh, there's this stuck door. I want to force the door open. Okay, roll a strength check or something, and then you can force the door open or not. Or I want to pick the lock, etc., right? Whatever. And you don't have to really explain what you're doing or how you're doing it too much. You just have to explain, I'm using this skill to try and achieve this result, right? And it's like, I want to use lock picking to try and open the lock. Done. You don't actually need to explain too much. You don't need to know what type of lock it is. You don't need to know who installed it. You don't need to know how old it is, how good your tools are, anything like that. Right? You just roll a check. If it succeeds, it succeeds. If not, then not, and you get the result you want or not. Um, and you can treat social checks the same way, as saying, I wish to use persuasion to get the guard to let us pass. Right? So your skill, your tool, and the result you want. And then you just roll, and depending on the outcome, you get what you want or you don't. You can do this. But there are a lot of people who are unhappy with it because, you know, it's social situation that somehow that makes it special, and that goes to this complaint has been around in games for a long time, like a long time. Um, but I think I can see argument for both. Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of arguments for both. Um, but a lot of this has come back up with the whole split that D&D has done into combat social exploration. Um, and the problem here is, and I think this actually is a problem. A lot of people, even like well-regarded community creators who write like, guides or have good discussions on things, even they see the split not as combat social exploration. They see the split as combat role-playing and exploration. And I have talked about this a bit on Blue Sky here and there, but essentially, when you equate social with role-playing, and you're playing a role playing game, then the only time you get to do the role playing part of the activity you're doing is when you're in a social situation. When you're not in a social situation, when you're in a combat or in exploration mode, whatever that means, right? That's completely ill defined, but whatever. You are not actually role playing? Question mark. Right? Um, which I think is complete bull. You are always role playing, right? Even in combat, even in exploration, even in anything else. And I don't like this split, by the way. I'm just using it because D&D uses it and a lot of people are familiar with it for all the wrong reasons. Um, so you are always role playing. even in combat, even in other things. So, but the perception is basically, oh, and was from um a very good Blue Sky post someone wrote in one of the discussion threads. I don't know if it was mine or if it was someone else's that I was also in. Um, Basically, this person said D&D players, especially the huge influx of D&D players right now with fifth edition and such, are highly incurious, and they get told, "Let's play a role-playing game." And then they see that the game consists of two parts: the dice rolly bits in combat, and then the talky bits outside of combat. And then they equate the dice rolly bits with game, because that's what you do in other games, and the talky bits with role playing, because they don't have any conception of what role playing is, so it must be this new thing that they haven't done before. Um, and that's it. That's the split they maintain, and this split gets reinforced by everyone else talking about it in this manner. And essentially, if you're rolling dice, you're not role playing. So to play a role playing game, you must be role playing. So we cannot roll the dice. Um, that is not true. That is not an argument against the almighty skill check, right? That is often an argument that is brought up against the almighty skill check, saying, "But we're role playing. You cannot roll dice. Why would I reduce the entire conversation into a single die roll? What does that do?" Right? That means I'm not playing anymore or not role playing anymore. Right? It destroys. I don't even know what it destroys, right? Because I can't follow the argument because it's not an argument. When you're rolling dice doesn't suddenly mean you stop role playing. Um, there are other arguments. You can say, well, trying to persuade a guard can be more dynamic than trying to pick a lock. And as someone who does lock picking as an occasional hobby, I can say, yeah, okay, trying to persuade someone to do something is definitely a bit more dynamic and complex than picking a lock. I can personally confirm that. And so you don't want to reduce this complexity and the dynamicity. Hey, the captions have that word. Okay, so apparently that's a word. Into a single chick. I can kind of understand that, right? You don't want to boil it down to that, but that's not really what is happening. What is happening is the complete opposite of saying, when we get to social situations, dice do not touch the table. And then you get the other side of the spectrum. Let me. Is it a spectrum? It's not really a spectrum, but it's the opposing reaction to it, which I call seducing the GM. So at this point, right, the social situation becomes a complete different game. A completely different game. And this game is now you need to seduce the GM in order to have your character do achieve what they want, right? And at this point, you are completely divorced from any mechanics. It doesn't matter how good the social skills and stats of your character are. It doesn't matter how many points you've put into those things. The only thing that matters is that the person sitting at the head of the table is persuaded by you, the player, giving good arguments. Um, and there are some, again, this is not wrong per se. A lot of like Critical Role, for instance, lives like that. But again, those people are trained actors. They know how to get into a character, including the GM knows how to get into a character and understand that what this character wants uh is different from what I personally want to expect right now. So you are still trying to persuade the character I'm inhabiting, right? And so on. Like this level of meta gaming, essentially, that I don't expect and I don't see non-trained or professional like improv actors and such doing. Um, and then it becomes a problem, right? And it also negates. There's a lot of arguments against both of these, right? On the one hand, sure, you could take out a lot of fun opportunities for character building, for character exploration. Hold on, I just though unless I know how to pick a lock, I can't explain what I'm doing, so I can't pick a lock by roll. That is the argument I hear. Yeah, so let's go through some of this. Right. How do I list that? So the almighty skill check, what that does, the good thing it does is basically it's simple, right? It's very quick and simple, and unambiguous. Right? If the roll comes up a certain number, you succeed on your persuasion. If not, then not. And there's no wiggle room. There's no GM going, but I think you can bring a better argument. But I'm not really convinced, you know. And so there's no like messing around. It's low trust, right? And that is not a bad thing. That is in fact sometimes a really good thing, having a low trust mechanic. Um, it's neutral, right, and so on. All of that, and it allows character skill, right? Um, so essentially, if you want to play a social character, a character who is good at persuasion and so on, and buy a lot of skills that do that and pump up your charisma stat or whatever it is in the game, right? Then you get to express this in these situations, right? Your character gets to shine. Someone building a lot of combat stats, for example, will then go, well, when there's a combat, I get to shine. And then someone building, I don't know, thief stats will be like, oh, if there's a lock I have to pick or trap I have to disarm, I get to shine. And then when it comes to social situations, then my character gets to shine. Yay, because I built my character that way. Um, but then I should have used black for this. Can I still do that? Let me do that real quick. So that I have green and red for good and bad points. Um People wanting their character to be good at something they are really bad at, like conversing perhaps. Yes. That is also a thing. That ties into this whole thing, like even if I am not physically strong or fit, I can still play a fighter or a ranger who can walk for hours and murder 30 goblins in a single breath, right? Even if I suck at puzzles or at lore or such, I can still play a really smart wizard. And even if I suck at people skills or convincing people of things, I would like to play a character who can do that, right? Almighty skill check, right? And then on the other side, we have seducing the GM. Um, right. On the flip side, I can see that doesn't capture complexity and dynamicity. Now that I know that that's a word, dynamicity, right, of social situations, um, and potentially removes. uh personality expression, right? Okay. Now, seducing the GM, it's basically flipped, right? Essentially, whatever we have on this side, it's flipped. So this one allows for deep character exploration, right? And acting out and such, right? And natural flow of conversations and such, right? It allows for this very natural expression of things. On the flip side, negation of character skill. Not just negation of character skill, but as an addendum to that, the forcing of player skill. And one big argument brought up against this, and one argument I do think holds merit, is well, why do I, the player, have to be good at persuading people if my character is trying to persuade people? When I, the player, don't have to be good at picking locks or swinging a sword or balancing on a tightrope when my character is doing these things. And I have yet to see a good counter argument to that. Right? The counter arguments that I've seen usually ranged at, but it's conversation, but role playing is like, no, the role playing exists everywhere, right? Um, yeah, and highly so high trust, high ambiguity. Oops, right? Because at that point, it's like, oh, I have to. That's why I call it seducing the GM, because you're no longer trying to talk to the character, like the guard or whoever. You're talking to the GM, and then the GM will say, is your argument good enough? Do I personally feel convinced by that? Um, and my counter is if you can offer ideas on how you can do it better or use an item to help, then it can affect the role or influence events. So that's a more general thing of a good description will help give you a bonus, right? A good idea will help give you a bonus. And in general, yeah, that can make for more engaging play and such, but it is usually only applied to social situations, right? Um, like, and this is part of what I'm trying to get to. So this is a very good point that you raise here. The whole, if you describe this well, then you get a bonus. Now, some games actually hard code that into into their system. There was an old game like from 20 years ago. That first where I first saw this happen was called the pool, and basically it's called the pool because every check is you roll a d6 dice pool, and the better and more engaging and such your description of your action, the more dice you get to your pool, right? And since then, a lot of games have done something in that direction. A lot of action games or martial arts games, for instance. I'm not sure if Feng Shui does that. I don't remember. Hold on, let me save this real quick. Um, so that I don't lose everything. Okay. So really, where the explanation, like if you give a cool explanation or description of things, you get a bonus. That's I mean, that requires a certain amount of buy-in from the table, and the willingness to uh like any sort of mechanic like that increases the trust threshold. Okay, I should define that. What the heck is the trust? Like high trust, low trust. What is that? So high trust, or this trust is essentially saying you trust that the other players at the table have your best interests in mind and are actively trying to collaborate and create a fun experience with each other and not working against you, right? And a high trust mechanic or high trust system or something like that means this mechanic only works well if this level of trust exists. Um, if and a low trust mechanic is you don't need this high level of trust for the mechanic to still do what it needs to do. Right? So an attack roll, for instance, is extremely low trust. Right? It's essentially saying you need to roll this number to hit the monster. And if you roll this number, you hit. If you don't roll the number, you miss. And there is no ambiguity in there. There is no uh um what's the word? Sub uh subjective GM interpretation of, yeah, you rolled a 13, which is the armor class, but I think maybe and so on and so, and then you miss after all. No, that doesn't exist, right? So an attack roll and damage rolls in that regard as well are extremely low trust. Whereas there are some mechanics that are higher trust. For example, this whole, if you give a good description, um you you get a bonus on the roll. That is much higher trust. Now you can build your entire system around this, and you can frame your mechanics in general in such a way to lower trust, the trust threshold. So not the trust at the table, but to lower the amount of trust needed for the mechanic to still work. You can do that by hard coding it into your mechanics in some way, shape, or form, and by doing things like including the entire table. Um, I see this in uh other games. I don't know where the term comes from. I forgot where the term comes from, but there's such a thing called the bullshit rule, where this is usually in games where your character has certain aspects of like, oh, my character uh is, I don't know, um I cannot think of any aspects. Is in tune with nature or something, right? So, and when I make this roll, I can use my in tune with nature aspect to help me out and give me a bonus, and things like that are subject to the bullshit rule, which is essentially if the table thinks, yeah, okay, this kind of aspect or personality trait or whatever would apply to this situation, then yeah, go ahead, you get the bonus. But if people think, yeah, no, you know what, nah, that's BS, man. You can't use in tune with nature when you're trying to sneak through a city or something. That doesn't work, right? Um, it's that's BS right there, and then you don't get the bonus, right? So you have these things explicitly mentioned in um in the mechanics and built into the mechanics. Do you like the trust concept like this? It's not my concept. It is, but it is a very useful thing. Like like the terms high trust and low trust are sometimes they appear in like RPG creator circles here and there. And it is useful to know about. Ads will appear in about 2 minutes. Okay. Let me try and finish the point. So yeah, if you hard code things like that into your mechanics, then it can work, and that reduces the amount of trust because that is always the case that this mechanic can be applied. But in a lot of games, like in D&D, for instance, that thing is, I don't even know if it's mentioned in the book. Good description gives you a bonus. I don't know if something like that is even mentioned, or if that's just a very common house rule. Um, and and at that point, it becomes a very cherry picking situation where I will only apply this rule to situations where I believe this rule is now going to give me more power over determining the outcome, right? So it's not just in social situations I will apply this rule. It's if I think in this particular social situation, you should not be able to persuade the king so easily to give up his crown, then I will selectively not apply the rule here because I want the game to go a certain way. And that's how I see it be applied. So the application of the rule becomes its own high trust issue, right? Um and that's why it's not a solution. At least not without changing some more fundamental things. Okay, the ad is about to hit. I need to go do some things. I need to like take care of like sorting out some trash and so on. So I will be right back. Where's my mouse here? And I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes. So yeah, be right back.
Endure. In enduring, grow strong.
Are we back? Okay, we're back. Good. Um, so yeah, a lot of these points, and these are usually welcome back. Thank you. Um, these are usually the two sides I see happening. Like this is in a lot of discussion, not just on design but on playing RPGs, right? A lot of guide videos or discussions on forums. Hey, Capsize, hello. How are you doing? How goes? I hope you had a good weekend. Awkward. Oh, yeah, awkward pain. Exactly. Where was I? Right. So this is essentially the discussion hovers between these 2 points only, right? It's like I either have to boil everything down to a single skill check, or I have to get rid of skill checks completely and start seducing the GM. And that that seems a bit reductive, right? Um it's like, yeah, I think we can do better than this. And there have been a lot of attempts of creating systems, for example, for social um like for negotiations or discussions. There's even like some people call it social combat. Again, that is an unfortunate term based on the fact that combat is still the mostly the mechanically heaviest portion, so people understand, oh, we're talking about mechanical systems now. Um and it's there's definitely ways to do that, but I want to see if it's first possible. At least in D&D, it's 90% plus of the rules. Yes, um, and that is the legacy of D&D, where it comes from. Right, D&D was a war game, a skirmish war game, and the role playing was incidental, right? But as it outgrew its core, not even core audience, but like the core uh gaming environment. Those are some very fancy emotes. What the heck? Uh oh, there's Mercy Wing. Oh, cool. And Right Wing. Dang. Okay. Um, where was I? Right. And it's essentially now accepted that combat um can be reduced and abstracted and other things cannot, even though, like, to anyone who thinks that combat uh what was that game called? I don't think it's called the Riddle of Steel. um oh no, it is. So to anyone who thinks, oh yeah, no, combat in D&D is in any way, shape, or form realistic, or in any way, shape, or form not completely abstracted out of anything resembling actual combat, I dare you to read The Riddle of Steel. The Riddle of Steel is an old. They're all old. It was done in the mid 2000s. An old RPG made by an actual HEMA practitioner. Right, an actual HEMA practitioner, HEMA trainer or instructor, actually. HEMA being historical European martial arts. Um, and this person wrote a role playing game specifically to capture actual weapon, historical weapon combat in the rules of an RPG. Um, and it's very different. It's very different. So yeah, but for some reason we're all okay with being having actiony cinematic combat. Is it really deadly? It's not just really deadly. It's also like you start off with who goes first. So you don't just roll initiative and be like, oh yeah, I want a high initiative number. I go first and the other person will wait. It's like you both before the first strike lands, both of you are like bidding on, oh, who will go first, because you don't necessarily want to go first, right? So that it becomes a whole sub game of bidding for initiative and such, and not wanting to go first, but if the other person goes first with that maneuver, then you do want to go first, blah, and it's the riddle of steel. I don't know how available it is by now, but maybe a PDF of the rules should be floating around the web somewhere. It wasn't super popular even back in its day. Um, so it wasn't very big. And a lot of games from back then are lost because, you know, a lot of websites went down and hosting services went down over the past 20 years. Um, so that's a lot of like good design ideas and innovative design ideas and such just lost to the ether. But I hope that there might still be a PDF floating around somewhere um from this game. Um yeah. So we accept that in D&D. We say, yeah, no, we take turns in combat and then we just stand still and wait for everyone else to hit us and then I will do my one attack against someone, right? So we kind of accept that level of abstraction for something as pivotal as life and death combat. But when it comes to talking, suddenly we're like, oh no, we can't do that. Or, oh no, we need to boil it down to just one roll. So, I don't know. So what I'm trying to do here right now is not create a mechanic, not create like rules or a system. Much rather, I'd first want to go into guidelines. Archive.org has it. Oh dang. Okay, very nice. Um. So yeah. So then it still survives. That's very good. It's would I ever play it? I don't know. I might just try it out once just to have experience the combat system. 272 pages. Yeah, I know. I know it's very detailed. And you get things like, oh, if a weapon hits you, you start bleeding. And for every turn you bleed, you get weaker. And things like that. It's like, whoa. Yeah, it's just a one shot, just not necessarily even a one shot, depending on where the rules are concentrated, but just like a systems test, right? Just run a combat or run two, three combats just to see how this game handles it, right? Um, just that. So I read the rules. Like if I misremember things, that's because I read the rules 20 years ago. And they are complex, and these are like bits and pieces that I still have in my brain, kind of. But you can see they left an impression because they were so interesting. There was a cyberpunk game I played that was just once you started losing was a death spiral. Um, Shadowrun works like that. Certain editions definitely of Shadowrun work like that. Fourth edition, I believe? Question mark. I don't know if fifth and sixth edition run like that. But fourth edition definitely had a death spiral mechanic in it, where if you take certain amounts of damage, you start getting a -1 on all your rolls. And that just made it more likely to get more damage. So every, like, I don't know how much. It might have depended on your stats, right? But every, I don't know, 4 damage is you hit another -1 threshold. So if you take like 8 damage, you're at -2, and then another 4 damage, you're at -3, and so on and so forth. So that was definitely the death spiral. I know Shadowrun 4th edition did that. I don't remember if they removed that in later editions. Um, so yeah, and I mean, Death Spiral was also a big point of discussion back then in the RPG design. It's like, do we use them? Are they good or not? And then the answer was, as with many other mechanics, if it fits the tone of your game, if it fits what you're trying to do with the game, then yeah, put it in. If it doesn't fit, then no, leave it out. Um, which is the case with basically all mechanics. Um, so yeah, what I'm trying to do here is provide like a framework more than mechanics. Right? So instead of saying, oh, if you do this, you get a +2 bonus or something like that, it's more like consider running a social encounter like this instead. Um, so that's more what I'm aiming for today. Um, so that you don't have to go all mechanics and only mechanics, or no mechanics, none at all, right? That you can kind of judge where to strategically insert the mechanics so that they don't uh, rule the whole encounter, but that you also don't touch the mechanics at all. Okay, so first off, not every social encounter needs to be run this way. Just like how you can have a locked door that is just a simple check, you can also have a locked door that's part of a puzzle, right? And then you run a whole thing, and half-hour long encounter trying to solve the puzzle of this locked door. And there are other ways of solving supposedly simple things. The game Errant, which is an OSR game, um, has a very, very fascinating way of handling lockpicking. Uh, in fact, if you want to look at a game that has just basically a lot of different mechanics for small tasks like this, check out Errant. Um, and they realized the door was a pull cell door that slides open. Exactly. Um, Someone switched out the signs. It said push on our side. No, I've been foiled yet again. And then the illiterate barbarian from third edition. Third edition barbarians were illiterate. Just goes, let me try pulling. Um, so yeah, Errant, basically how they handle lockpicking is you have a certain mechanical framework. That is, you first have to determine the type of lock, right? And they give a bunch of suggestions. You can have things like an iron lock, a copper lock, a bronze lock, a gold lock, a gemstone lock, a whatever, right? You can have different materials, or you can have different other descriptors of the locks. Um, and the idea is every single lock of the same descriptor is opened the same way. Is this very abstracted and almost like dungeon crawl video gamey? Yes, it is. Does it matter? No, because it can provide for fun gameplay. And this is a very interesting system that rewards both player skill and character skill. And how lockpicking now works is you have 3 actions that you have to do to a lock, and when you do those 3 actions correctly in the correct order, the lock opens. And these 3 actions are tap, turn, and twist, right? So and there's a couple of rules, like you cannot have all 3 be the same action, and you cannot have a repeated action. So you cannot have tap tap twist, for example. You can have tap twist tap, right? But you cannot have tap and then tap again, and so on, or twist twist turn, or turn twist twist, or so. Those cannot exist, right? So it kind of cuts down on the possibilities of what kind of actions you can have. And I think they come out with a list of like 16 locks. Um, right, 16 lock types based on the possible combinations of having 3 actions, uh, and with those restrictions. Um, I'm not doing the math right now. 12 locks. Yeah, it should be 12 locks. Yeah. Okay. Um, if I didn't make a mistake right now with the math. Anyway, so essentially, once you as a player figure out, oh, an iron lock is picked by using tap, twist, turn, then anytime you encounter an iron lock, you can just say, okay, I apply tap, twist, turn, and then I open the lock. Um, and so the character skill is expressed in things like, oh, if you have the lock picking skill, you already know the first action to do, right? And that gives you a lot of clues of what the next two actions can be. Right? Because if the first action of an iron lock is tap, and you have a lock picking skill, so you know when you encounter an iron lock, that's it. First action is tap. Then you know the second action has to be either, yeah, exactly, twist or turn, and then 50% on the third action as well. The third action then has to be tap, and then whatever one wasn't the second action, right? So again, 50% chance. So even with just guessing, you have a 25% chance of picking the lock, which is not bad, right? And that is how character skill gets expressed in there, and then the rest is just a fun little puzzle that's just, it's not a super complex puzzle, but it's still a small like diversion. And as a player, if you then figure this out either through character skill or just trying things out, then you can write it down on your character sheet. It's like, oh, well, I know iron locks are tap, twist, turn, done. And then the next time you encounter a bronze lock, it's like, oh, okay. And then GM goes, oh, you have lock picking, you succeeded on it. Okay, the first action of a bronze lock is turn. Like, okay, and so on. So you can totally mechanize this in such a way, right? Um, and let's have a completely different what is it, a completely different system just for that. And then you can, I think there's rules in there, like if you fail on two of the actions, if you guess two of them wrong, the lock seizes up and can no longer be picked, right? Then you have to destroy the door or destroy the lock or something. um and you can have modifiers. You can have like a secure lock or something, which if you guess one wrong, then it seizes up, or whatever, right? You can modify it and make it more interesting if you want to, um, and things like that. So it's totally possible to create an entire mechanical system for that. That's not quite what I'm going for here today. Um, but it is interesting to think about, right? What kind of a mechanical system, and there are some good mechanical systems for negotiations and persuasions and such, definitely. But what I want to do here is more like think about how can you run social encounters, right? How can you think about social encounters? How can you prep a social encounter, or when an encounter like this happens, what do you need to take into consideration? Um, and the goals of this uh is more like guidelines or framework that is lower the trust. I'm just gonna call it trust threshold. I've never seen that term before, but I'm just gonna call it that for now, as I have defined it. And lowering the trust threshold means things like less ambiguity, right? And I'm also gonna call it more player agency. More player info is probably a better word. More player info, and more consistency. Right? Again, not every table might want something like this. A lot of the big actual plays that you see, Critical Role and such, they want the high trust because they're a group of good friends that have known each other for many years and played with each other for many years, and they are trained actors who can get into character, get into the story, right? Um, so they want the high trust. They want to really get into the situation. And in that way, it's like they want to be persuaded and have a great story over the roles. Yes, exactly, right? And it's like, okay, sure. So for that table, but then they already know how they want to run social encounters or other encounters, right? They already know. This is more for people who don't necessarily know what they're looking for, or have only seen this high trust situation but are not in a similar table situation, in a similar social contract, right? And then they will be applying the wrong tool to the wrong situation, or the wrong mindset to the wrong situation, right? And it's more for this. So people who need a bit of guidance, need a bit more of this mechanical, not even mechanical consistency, but like situational consistency, right? Um, and and also very much this is not narrative mechanics where like narrative mechanics are basically where the mechanics themselves help drive the story, right? Where you set up mechanics in such a way that the and it's deeper than that. It's also that you set up mechanics in such a way that you have characters that want to, or need, not even want to, need to go through a an intense story, a conflict driven story or character driven story, and then you set up the mechanics in such a way that allows for these, to use terms that I recently remembered, or was reminded of from Laios Egri, who wrote Art of Dramatic Writing, right? Passionate and fit characters. Passionate being they have core values that they must follow, or must achieve, and fit as in they are fit to encounter conflict with other characters, right? And you then give the player mechanics that allow the channeling of these characters into the story, essentially, and then help prompt them if they want. Um, right, and that's, yeah, that's narrative stuff. That's not what Critical Role is doing at all. They are doing story, yes, but they're doing story not through the mechanics as much. So that's not narrative mechanics because there's not mechanics. Anyway, a lot of tangents today, as is the case. Um, right, so lower trust threshold, and um, with this, I want to uh like provide focus on, um how do I call this, on like in the important parts, but that's obvious. How do I phrase this so that it becomes more clear what I'm talking about? Focus on actionable, that's a good word, actionable traits, right? And this is a discussion I still think about, where I believe someone, when we were talking about RPG design, where someone completely misunderstood um mechanical design. Basically I was saying, oh, if you want to prepare something like a guard, right, who is an obstacle, who doesn't want to let the characters into, I don't know, the party at the palace, but the party needs to get into the palace, what do you do? So you can set up things like, oh, what does the guard want? What does the guard not want? Right? How can you actionize these things, and how can the players then try to manipulate these traits that the guard has to get a favorable outcome for them? And and then some person was like, yeah, but that's not how people work. People have like entire life histories. And it's like, why is the guard loyal to the queen, right? And you need to explore all of this going on. It's like, no, you don't. That's not necessary for a simple guard, right? Who's going to have 5, maybe 10 minutes of scene time tops and then never appear again in the game. You don't need to generate all of that or even come up with all of that, right? Um, so actionable traits, right? Things like what does the guard what is the attitude of the guard? Well, the guard is loyal to the queen, so he will not just randomly let people in, right? But what does the guard want? Well, maybe the guard is also greedy, right? Um, maybe the guard is loyal to the queen because they like affording food. Yeah, yeah, and that's hi Havarius, how are you doing? And yeah, that's definitely something you can do. It's like, so if the party offers a bribe to the guard, then they have a much better chance of just getting through, right? Um, and unless they are going to be recurring, or maybe they become one from this. Yeah, exactly. Like they can always become a recurring character. But then you can say, okay, this was a really interesting encounter. The character's really bonded with the guard, right? Maybe the guard, you just get the idea of the guard has a traumatic life story and just needs to do his job to prove himself right now. Um and the party is like, you know what, let me buy you a drink. And then they bond with the guard over a 2 hour big role playing session. And then the guard becomes, I don't know, a contact or something. Anything can happen, right? That's the beauty of role playing games. Um, but yeah, you don't plan NPCs like that. And yeah, hi Havarius. I hope the weekend has treated you well. Um, right? You don't plan like this. It's also a meme I found somewhere years ago. It's like, it has treated me well. That is good to hear. That is very good. But yeah, a meme I found is like some beginner game master asking, "Oh, how do I design my big evil boss, right? How do I design the final boss and such of the campaign? Right? What do I do? How do I get my players to get to know the big boss and hate the big boss and such?" And then some others like, you're playing a role playing game, right? It's like, yeah, yeah. So just throw a whole bunch of NPCs at them, whichever one clicks with the players, and whichever one they end up hating, that person will become your final boss. It really is that simple, right? Um, or a segment from a guide video, a similar thing, right? From a video from the channel Dungeon Craft. It's like, how do you get an NPC? How do you get players to like an NPC? You don't. The players will just randomly like NPCs or not. It's like, oh, you designed this NPC that is supposed to be their quest giver and contact, and you gave them a big backstory, and you planned a big social encounter with them, and you talk, and the player's just like, yeah, whatever. Can we go to the dungeon now, right? And they just forget the person's name, and then to go to the dungeon, they hire a hireling to carry all of their loot. And it's like, okay, we hire this dude for like 5 gold. Let's go. What is this dude's name? And you just like look on your list of random names. Bruno, whatever, right? And then they get into the dungeon, they get into a tough fight, and then Bruno has to help with fighting because there's no way out, and then he rolls 3 20s in a row, and all the players go like, Bruno, 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 and suddenly he becomes the most liked character in the entire campaign just because of random happenstance. That's what happens. That's the game. That is why you play, and that's what makes role-playing games so amazing, right? Um, so that embrace it. Embrace that, right? There's numerous stories of GMs doing something like this. It's like, oh, uh yeah, I had this big boss planned, but the players just surprised them, ambushed, 1 arrow to the back, boom, the boss was dead. What now? The lieutenant was there. That is going to be the next big boss, right? Exactly. Bruno, exactly. Right. Like that video still sticks in my head because it's such a good example of great advice, right? Um, and which is why I really think Every time someone asks, how do I not get my campaign to go off the rails? My first instinct is you haven't understood role-playing games, right? The question itself isn't wrong. The very framework within which such a question could even manifest is wrong, right? So you're not even wrong. Is my instinct whenever I see question like this, or whenever I see a guide like that. It's like how to prevent your game from going off the rails, or what to do if the game goes off the rails. It's like, yeah, off the rails can only be a thing if the very mindset you go into the game with is already wrong, right? Do the kill zone thing where big bad gets killed and the next game is two people trying to take power due to the resultant vacuum. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like it leads to amazing stories. And I think this is something that has been lost to the wayside. Because old games were played like this. Old games, if you look at them, they were full of random tables, random generation tables, right? So you would just the party would travel to a certain location, and then what is at the location, I don't know. Let me roll a bunch of tables and find out. Oh, there is a bandit camp there. Okay, how many bandits are in there? There's like 250 bandits. Okay, what are they doing here? What is their backstory? And then things just develop from there. Or, oh, there is a monster lair here. What monster is it? It's a manticore. Okay, I didn't plan for manticores, but you know what? We roll with it. And this is the emergent story that that is no longer a thing, really. If you also look at um adventure design, a lot of adventure design from back in the old days, like 40 years ago, and adventure design now. In my opinion, if you want to have everything be scripted, why not write a book or play a video game? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the whole thing. Um, adventure design, like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, holy heck, maybe not that long ago, 40 years ago, yeah, was basically just we give you this adventure location, this complex dungeon, and we say, okay, there's like two factions in this dungeon, right? There's the goblins and the kobolds. And they each occupy, the goblins occupy this part and the kobolds occupy this part. The goblins want to do this, right? They want to have a secure base to raid caravans that go through here. And the kobolds are like, there is a shrine to their dragon god that they want to get, but the shrine is currently occupied by the goblins. And the best secret exits to ambush sites are currently occupied by the kobolds. But they're both in a stalemate right now because they cannot really fight an all-out war without risking too much, etc., etc. So you get this whole like political game among the monsters inside a dungeon. And also the dungeon was an old tomb with like ghosts in it and some undead that are just hanging out and some old treasure. And then the player characters stumble into there and it's a huge powder keg that just goes off because the players then go right because why not instead of go left, and then they murder a dozen goblins and suddenly the power balance in the dungeon shifts and then things go wild, right? And that is just a dungeon. Right? And you get all of these things happening in there. And dungeon and adventures nowadays. Hold on, let me read the comment real quick. Even though then a lot of fun video stuff in video games like Dragon's Dogma comes from walking to a place on a quest and then surprise Griffin. Yeah, exactly. Um, the video games, just by the very medium, are not as flexible as cannot account for every possibility, right? Maybe the kobolds now start attacking the goblins, and then the player characters see that and are like, you know what? Maybe we can ally with the kobolds, right? And if you don't account for such a choice in the video game, then the players can just not do that. But um in a an open game and a tabletop game. Or like there's so many good stories of this. There's this one very classic big adventure called the Temple of Elemental Evil. Mm, like it's a name that's been floating around in Dungeons and Dragons Old Adventures. It's one of the big classics, Temple of Elemental Evil. And same thing, it's just a big massive dungeon with like a lot of political factions in there. It has a history. It has things that are actively happening right now, right? Like there's a cult inside trying to open or like summon elemental princess or something like that, right? I think that's why it's called the Temple of Elemental Evil. Um, and so on. And when you travel from the village, that is the home base, the village of Hamlet, to the temple, the upper layers of the ruins are inhabited by bandits. Because why not, right? It's this outside where there's no law enforcement, but it's ruins. We can kind of live here relatively comfortably. And it's supposed to be a big combat encounter, right? It's like, oh, there's like I don't know, a dozen bandits versus the player characters. It's like, what do you do? Do you fight them? Do you chase them off? Do you try and sneak around them? Whatever. And I read one story where the player characters negotiated with the bandits and are like, look, you have a dozen people, we have a dozen people. If we go into this dungeon together, we will have a much better chance when we encounter any monsters down there than any group of us on our own. And then the bandits were like, you know what? Let's team up. And so they went into the dungeon with a huge like 25 person group and just steamrolled the opening of the dungeons completely. Um so yeah, things like that can happen. And if the GM plans this as a combat encounter, right? This is also a big disservice that I think the whole tripartition of combat social exploration has done to the game. We are many. Yeah, we are Legion, exactly. It's basically, oh, the bandits are a combat encounter. They have combat stats, they have tactics, right? And if you have this in a modern D&D adventure, you probably have like 2.5 pages of tactics that the bandits will use. If the players do this, then the bandits will do that. But then the bandits also have this thing, and then they will do this. Blah 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 blah. It's and then the GM is never given the option to even consider the players teaming up with the bandits, right? Because the players correctly figured out, you know what, the bandits want money, right? They want some money, so maybe they can, I don't know, buy off their guilt or buy off their sentences or buy maybe a small farm somewhere so that they can live not in ruins or whatever, right? Money, awesome. There's money in the dungeon. There's treasure in there. We have a much better chance if we're many, if we're in a large group. Yeah. Um, but if you then say, oh, encounter number 2, combat, then there is only one way to solve this encounter, and that actually takes away player agency, and makes the story much less interesting, and makes the game less interesting, right? And this is the problem with a lot of newer adventures. They are very much not written to be run. They are written to be read like an adventure novel. If you actually read some of the new like the 5e adventures and such, they are written in such a style. If you have ever tried to run a 5e adventure using one of the published adventure books, it's horrible. I've talked about this before. It's horrible because information is spread all over the place. You get huge blocks of text that are very difficult to parse. Information is put into in a strange order because the writer wants to surprise the GM, right? It's like, oh, you see this and that and that and blah 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 in this room, but wait, there's also this. And then the GM reading it goes like, oh, awesome, this is exciting. But when you want to run the game, it's like, no, that is the wrong way to present this information to someone who wants to use it at the table. right? Which is why it's like you buy, how much do those things cost? $30, $60? I don't even know. You buy a book for a huge amount of money, and then you still have to sink like a dozen hours of work into it to make it usable. Right at that point, just spend half the time writing your own adventure. Seriously? Uh it's the first Tiamat one is really bad. DMs have spent so much time to remake the entire adventure to make it sense and give it context. I have, yeah, I have read really bad things about the Tiamat um adventure. It's essentially just one big railroad, I think, or so. Like I don't remember. I haven't read too much. It is, yeah, okay, then I remember correctly. Um it and that's also a problem with trying to plan out an adventure that goes over 10, 15, 20 levels. You cannot plan that far into the future. Yeah, okay, you can have certain beats that you can maybe find ideas for and plan and say, all right, this the general idea is there's a cult trying to summon the Dragon Queen. Um, and they have this general plan. They need these artifacts. They need to secure this location. They will do this, right? This general idea. And I can imagine, all right, if things go smoothly, they will then acquire these artifacts, and then they will go here and summon. And if it's summoned, if the Dragon Queen is summoned, this will happen, right? And that is just the stakes. But in even in a good story, the stakes are meant to be averted. They are there to provide motivation. They are not there to come to pass. Right? That's kind of the whole point. I make a group that has a plan that will work this way if they are not interrupted. Yeah, exactly. Right? So to have an idea of what this group is capable of, what methods they might use, what resources they have, what they want to achieve, how they go about it, um, and like it doesn't even have to be a detailed timeline, but like they want these artifacts, right? Um, and they want this location, and they want this ritual book, and then they want to perform the ritual. That's it. And then you can say, all right, so these first two artifacts that they're trying to get, where are they? How do they get them? Right? What what kind of obstacles might they run into? Because this is the same kind of stuff that players will then get into, right? If they feel, or if they hear about, oh, there's this cult trying to get these artifacts. Oh, there's an artifact right there. We did some information gathering and found out, there's an artifact right there. If we can get to it before the cult, then we can delay their ritual or completely avert it. And any planning you do about how to get to the artifact for the cult, the same kind of ideas apply to how to get to the artifact for the player characters, right? If it's in a dungeon with these traps and blah and this history, and the cult would have to go through it, while the players will also have to go through it. Boom, that's your adventure right there, right? Um, and it's anything after that. Well, you see if the player characters successfully grab the artifact, then you can see, well, did they have a run-in with the cult? Maybe the cult will say, oh no, our objectives have just changed. We need to grab the artifact from these troublemakers. Or if they didn't have a run-in with the cult or whatever happened, then the cult might say, maybe our information was wrong. Let's go find the other artifacts first, and then we'll keep searching for this artifact that we somehow missed. Right? But that fully depends on what happened during that first adventure. And you cannot know what will happen during that first adventure until you're done running it. And and anything beside after that is like it's completely open. So yeah, this has gone over to adventure writing now. This was supposed to be uh about social encounters. Oh my goodness. Oh, the sidetrack is big. Had an idea. Tell me if you've heard this one. I have a person who needs a drop of a Balespawn blood to open a path to Avernus. I'm going to talk to them, menacing and send minions to kill them. instead of asking them if they want to come along. Huh. I don't know. That sounds like a choo-choo situation right there, right? It's hmm. But like also the more I think about Siege of Dragonspear, the more I realize not only is it a very contrived situation with the player or with all the I say players, I mean like the power players, right? The important people within the story um being as obtuse as possible. Um the entire story also doesn't explore any themes that Baldur's Gate as a series explores, right? So Baldur's Gate as a series explores the idea of identity and fate and birthright and that kind of deal, right? Because you are uh, a child of Baal, the Lord of Murder, right? A god. And so, do you give in to your blood? Do you become the murder machine and fulfill your father's destiny and become the new Lord of Murder or things like that, or aspire to, right? Which is exactly what the antagonist, Saravok, in the first game wants to do, right? He wants to become the new Lord of Murder. And he has his plan to do that by starting a huge war and being like, this is my sacrifice to you. And the idea is basically, do you follow these footsteps or do you defy your birthright? Do you defy your your history, your identity, and forge your own, right? And this is the theme, the major theme of Baldur's Gate. At least Baldur's Gates 1 and 2. I don't know about Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't played it yet. I don't want to know anything about it yet. So, yeah. But the themes of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 is basically, can you escape your birthright? Can you forge your own identity? Do you want to forge your own identity? Right? That kind of deal. Even if you become the Lord of Murder, do you want to become the next Ball or do you want to become your own thing? Right? Can you become your own thing if you become the new Lord of Murder? Eh? But these are the questions the game asks and that you try to answer through the story. Um, and it also deals with like the power of a god, like divine essence and divine power, and what that does to people around you, and so on. Those are like secondary themes that are explored a bit. Um, and Siege of Dragonspear touches exactly none of that. It touches precisely nothing. The whole "you are a Baal spawn" is a plot device. You become a MacGuffin. And that, I think, is uh, like they didn't even explore the idea of identity through Kalar Argent, right? It's not even, oh, she's an Asimar, right, with celestial blood. Is that why she does things? Is that like her identity? Does she feel like she has to conquer Avernus and free all the souls, right? Or is she trying to defy her destiny? Is she a mirror, kind of like Saravok was a mirror? No, she's on a personal vendetta and is willing to sacrifice tens of thousands of people to fulfill her personal, to save her uncle or something like that, right? It's like, wow. So that just threw out of that all of that out. Um, a clear through line that is interrupted in the middle. Yeah. And then they somehow have to wrangle the plot into, oh wait, hold on, we somehow have to get back into, you are Ballspawn and you are now mistrusted and you have to flee Baldur's Gate. Oh my goodness, let's squeeze that into the last half hour, right? Um in another yet another very contrived kind of happening of events. So eh, like, not only was the story overall not great, um, it's not a Baldur's Gate story. Had this been its own game, I would have said, okay, yeah, whatever. It's nice, you know. It's It's okay. Maybe worth playing if you're into like RPG stories like that. But it being an interquel of Baldur's Gate that does nothing with the story of Baldur's Gate, with the theme of Baldur's Gate, uh it's really, really weak. Um and it was criticized. Siege of Dragonspear was criticized for all the wrong reasons. Um it was criticized for having a trans character in it. So yay. It got bad reviews. Like the entire discussion around Siege of Dragonspear was one side hating that there was a trans character in it, and the other side saying, no, actually, that's a good thing. And that's what the discussion revolved around. Because transphobes gone to transphobe, you know? Awesome. No one touched about the themes of Baldur's Gate. No one touched about the contrivance of the plot. I didn't even know that was a thing. Right? I was when the expansion came out, and I was like, should I buy this? Do I want to play this? And I read a lot of reviews and discussions about it. It was all about there's a trans character in it. And I was like, that doesn't tell me anything about the quality of the story. That doesn't tell me about, you know, the expansion pack itself. Um, so I went into it completely blind. The only thing I knew about it was it's an interquel and there's a trans character in it. And that's the only things I knew about because that's the only thing people would talk about. And then, yeah. And then it actually became a completely disappointing interquel on its own merits, essentially. So yeah, I didn't know that there was a controversy online regarding there was a trans character. Um, so it was a bit more subdued because again, the thing came out 10 years ago, and back 10 years ago, trans people weren't the hot topic right wing discussion as they are now, right? As I should say, we are now. um, Back then, 10 years ago, it was more like gay marriage, right? That was the big thing. Um, but even then, that was a minority ish. That was a couple of people in power. Most people were actually for things like gay marriage, right? The Prop 8 protests and such in California back then were like big things. There are a lot of people protesting against prop was it for or against Prop 8? I forgot what it was worded as, right? If yes or no was the pro gay marriage one. Um, but protests for gay marriage and approval of gay marriage, right? Those were big. Okay. Um, and that was a big discussion online. So trans people weren't really a part of the public consciousness back then, um, as much as it is now, right? Uh, so there was, but Gamergate was a thing. Was Gamergate 10 years ago? It feels like it was 10 years ago, roughly, right? The timelines kind of sort of match up. So we already, among gamers, have this minority, this right wing minority, right? Yeah, around then, okay. So that existed. So when Siege of Dragonspear came out, it was the usual suspects going, "Oh my god, trans person," right? 2014. Okay. So yeah, timelines match up. Um, so it was very likely Gamergate people or Gamergate affiliated people who are like, "Oh my god, trans person, bad." Um, and then they derailed the entire discussion to be about this thing, and then suddenly misogyny started being flung around, and because I think one of the writers or both of the writers of Siege of Dragonspear, I don't know, are women, or are very prolific in like the feminist gaming journalism scene or something like that. I don't know, but there was something around that happening as well, being thrown into discussion as well.
I didn't pay too much attention to it because it became tedious. There was already enough Gamergate happening back then. So yeah, it derailed the entire discussion. And so when I finally played that, it's like, actually, this thing isn't very good, but not because of the trans person. Um, Trans people in games like that is good, but the story overall and the themes it's not exploring, uh, that's not good. Okay, we actually got derailed completely. There's another ad break happening. I'm feeling some hunger. I need to go grab some food, actually. So I'll be back a little longer, maybe like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And I need some food. It's 1 p.m. I haven't eaten yet. So I will be right back. I will see you all in a couple of minutes. So yeah, see you then. Getting back to the plot, you can persuasion to see if you can get your message across. Oof, that's a tough one. We'll see. I may have to seduce chat. Okay, we'll see. All right, be right back. Hey, I'm back. Okay. Didn't take too long, I hope. Um, yeah. Okay, I have some food here, so I will be eating every now and then a little bit. Okay. Hey. Hi, awkward paint. Um, oof. Okay, take a moment to reset. We had a big discussion, but I think I got like my points across. A discussion on like adventure design, and then a review of Siege of Dragonspear. So yeah, let's try and slowly ease our way back into what's actually on the screen. Mm. So provide a framework, and the goal of the framework is lower trust threshold, which is expressed in ambiguity, player info, and consistency. And then provide a focus on actionable traits. Things that both the GM and the players can latch onto and use in this encounter. And I still want, okay, and another goal is allow for both player and character skill expression. Because I think that's very important. You don't want mechanics to replace player skill or negate player skill. Because at that point, you are essentially playing a board game, and player skill is then reflected in system mastery, right? And not like storytelling or improv or collaboration or things like that, right? Which is what makes role playing games special. Mm. At the same time, you want character skill to matter so that players can express themselves through a certain character that they have created. Right? That was the whole idea of, if I'm not good at social situations, but my character is, I would like that to have an impact on the game and on the story and such, and have my character's good social skills actually have a chance to shine. Um. Okay, so hold on. I'm also eating, which is why there's breaks. Mm. So how to do this? Makes sense. It's like a tightrope walk. It is, and different tables prefer different things, right? Again, you cannot control the table. Um, you cannot design for every single table out there, but it is still possible to provide certain guidelines to make sure there's a baseline shared experience, I think. Mm. Okay, so um I think the actionable traits are going to lead to these things, right? If essentially it becomes about how to think about NPCs, right? As in, not their full personality, but things like wands, secrets, fears, etc. Right? So if you have a checklist, maybe like internal conflicts which are caused by, say, two different wands that are mutually exclusive, mm, or or something like that, right? So, like the guards want to be loyal to the queen, and the guards want to provide for his family, right? They can be made to be mutually exclusive, right? So if you get this kind of checklist of, right, what is happening here? What does this character actually want or not want, or keep a secret, or is afraid of, or uh like is worried about, right, etc. um then you can much better judge things like, will persuasion work, what kind of persuasion will work, will intimidation work, and so on, right? If you might have something like, oh, if you have really cruel player characters, you can be like, if you don't do what I want, then we will threaten your family. And then all of a sudden you can be like, okay, this is very high on the list of things this NPC does not want to happen, right? Danger to the family. So you can even rule things, and this is where the player skill and character skill thing comes into play, which is um a kind of, you don't have to rank them all numerically all the time, but you can have like a simple ranking of all of these traits, right? Um, and you can designate certain things like an automatic success or an automatic failure, right? If you say like, oh, if you don't do what we want, we will threaten your family, then that could be an automatic success. If and or essentially the intimidation roll or something might then be, does the NPC believe that you will actually carry through with that threat, right? That is also like, what do different skills actually mean, right? What makes a persuasion roll different from an intimidate roll? Is it just what you say? Not really, is it? Right? Is it how you say it? Also not really. It's, are you lying to them or not? Do you seem like the type to go through with your threats, right, or not? Lowered or advantage or success depending. Yeah, exactly. Right? It's like this kind of thing really helps. Maybe some guard has a drinking problem, right? That could be their secret or their flaw, right? A flaw is also something you can put in your checklist. Drinking problem, and then if the player character say, "Yo, let's dangle this bottle of wine in front of you. This really expensive bottle of wine that you uh cannot usually afford," and the guard might be like, "Okay, I never met you. Just go through. Leave the bottle," right? Mm. Things like that. Or things like automatic failure. Right? If you just walk up to the king and be like, "Yo, give me your crown," I roll. I roll for persuasion. That is never gonna work. The king is not just gonna randomly give up this crown just because you marched up to him and rolled a 20. It takes learning about the world, etc. Exactly. So these things can lead to automatic success slash failure, and it makes it paradoxically having this more abstracted gamified system makes the players treat the world less like a game. Yeah? Or things like bonuses, penalties, etc. Right? And this is one side of the coin, right? But I rolled a nat 20. I seduced the dragon, right? Exactly. So if the GM or the game system or so says this is how NPCs work, this is the kind of things players can keep in mind when dealing with an NPC in a social situation, then they will be more likely, if they know that this is happening, then they will be likely to try different things, to pay attention to different signs, or think of, well, what could this person want, or what could this person fear, or heck, maybe it becomes a whole side adventure of like, oh, this person has a secret and they really don't want us exposing the secret. So we have to find out what it is. And that becomes a whole side quest. And then once you have the secret, you can then go to the NPC and say, yo, we know your secret. Do what we want or we will reveal it. And it's almost like, oh, we're trying to kill this demon that can only be killed by this very special weapon. We need to go on a side quest to find that weapon, and then we can walk up to the demon and be like, yo, we have this weapon, we can fight you now and have a chance to win, right? It's the same basic idea. Recon mission, exactly, right? So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is slightly more mechanical, which is two things that very often happen that kill momentum, that kill story momentum, right? So the other side, this is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the mechanical framework, I guess. Framework slash mindset. I'm not sure how to name this, but maybe it'll become clear when I say what it is. So there's two things here that tend to happen. The first thing is the null result. Null result slash no consequences. Right? Null result slash no consequences means when you have a roll that you make, right? And the only thing that happens when you fail that roll is nothing happens. That is the null result. Right? And null results are boring. They are boring. And they need to, like, most of the time, it leads to you fail to break open a door and nothing happens. Exactly. Like, consequences can be all sorts of things, right? It can be directly tied to the action you're doing. It can be tied to the environment you're doing the action in. It can be tied to progression. It can be tied to anything, right? This is why I'm now a big fan of tracking time in games. Because time is always a cost you pay. And in fact, time was a huge cost you paid in old school Dungeons and Dragons and such. Broken equipment, cave in, alert guards, exactly. Or just time passing. All right. So if you're in a dungeon and you have a locked door in front of you, trying to pick the lock takes a dungeon turn. Right? Takes a whole dungeon turn, takes the 10 minutes. What happens? Well, if you fail to pick the lock, you can try again, but that's costs you another dungeon turn, right? And you don't want to spend dungeon turns because every turn or every couple of turns, the GM rolls for random encounters. Every turn that passes, your torches burn down more and more, and they only last 6 turns. Any spells you have active, which you only have like 1 or 2 of per day, their durations tick down. If you have something like a stone skin spell that lasts for an hour, congratulations, now it only lasts for 50 minutes. Because you spent 10 minutes standing around waiting for the thief to open the door. If you have like higher time tracking, like hourly time tracking, at some point you need to rest and consume rations, right? Every couple of hours, you need to rest and consume a ration. Otherwise, your characters start becoming weak and things like that, and so on and so forth, right? So there was this constant ticking clock in the background that was hard coded into the mechanics, and like it had nothing to do with the check itself. It had to do with the fact that you attempted a check in the first place, right? So consequences could, of course, be broken tools, or that the lock is now completely busted. You cannot pick it again. Someone who comes by will see that someone tried to pick the lock, right? Things like that. That is more direct consequence of that. Or you can have these environmental consequences or the ticking clock that is always there. I like it. Yeah. And it made like for a very different experience where you suddenly had to budget your time. Right? Because it became a vital resource. You did not want to run into a wandering monster, because that wandering monster could very well kill you, kill the entire party. So you don't want those checks to happen, right? And things like that. So even a consequence like that, even just a consequence of time passes, things progress, right? If it's more directly related to the adventure, things like, oh, the cultists are doing a ritual right now. They're preparing and then casting a ritual. If you fail to break down this door, or if you fail to pick the lock, you've wasted some time. And that means the preparation of the ritual advances by another tick, right? And if it hits, I don't know, 8 ticks, then the preparation is done, and then they will start sacrificing, the people they have kidnapped or whatever it is, right? Yeah. So that is definitely gonna be crap. Let's not spend time picking the lock. Let's just break through it. That takes less time. Break open the door. It causes noise, which again is another consequence. 1 person every 2 turns. Yeah, exactly. And so on. And the problem with this null result / no consequences thing is that it leads to something that is sometimes known as skill dogpiling. And I despise skill dogpiling because it is highly related to the next problem that I will discuss after I explain what this is. So skill dogpiling is basically when every single character just says, "Oh, I want to roll this as well." Right? And this is not the same as a group check where like the entire party sneaks into somewhere and everyone has to roll their sneak skill or whatever. Right? That is everyone checking on their own, right? Having their own obstacle, so to speak. No, skill dogpiling is there's one obstacle, and really only one person needs to succeed. But because there are no consequences for failing, everyone tries it. Right? Oh, there's a lock we need to pick. Okay, then the rogue tries picking it. Oh, I fail. And then the wizard goes, you know what? I have a dex of 13. I will try as well. And then after the wizard fails, the fighter goes, you know what? Why not? It hasn't cost us anything yet. I will also try to pick the lock. Right? Or this happens very often with things like perception skills or information skills, lore, and so on. Right? It's like, oh, I searched the bookcase. Oh, I searched the bookcase as well. I want to roll perception. Yeah, and then the GM just goes, everybody roll perception. And then everyone still fails, and then the GM is like, dang, they didn't find the one book that they needed to find in order to continue the adventure. What do I do now? This actually happened in a game I played as a player. We were playing Call of Cthulhu, and me and another player were searching a room. and we had to find this one book that was absolutely crucial for the adventure to continue. So the other player rolls search hidden or find hidden, I think it's called in Call of Cthulhu, and I roll and we both fail. And the GM is like, both of you roll again, and we both roll again and we fail again. And then the GM just sits there, there's a book on the table. Like, wow. So that's skill dogpiling, where everybody just rolls, or sometimes the GM even calls for, hey, do you want to also roll perception? Hey, you also roll perception. Everybody roll perception. Why not? Right? Nothing bad will ever happen from that. So, and the other problem is, how do I phrase this? Rolling for information. Rolling for information. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Right? If you hide information behind a roll, you have to be prepared for the fact that this information will not be available to the players. And most of the time, that is not something you want. At our table, the GM tells people to roll perception specifically. Then that is probably because there is something specifically hidden there, and perception is more like a notice roll, right? I would assume. Which, okay. Oh, we can't say we rolled it, is what I mean. Okay. So rolling for information is good if the information is an obstacle of some sort, something like, or leads into other obstacles, right? Something like, someone waiting for an ambush, waiting to ambush the party, and then you roll for perception to see if you notice the ambush. And if you do notice, then maybe you don't get surprised. And if you don't notice, then the enemy gets a surprise round on you. Things like that. It's like, okay, fair. But that's not what I mean here. Rolling for information, I mean just information to keep the game going, right? Because the ambush, whether or not you notice the ambush, it's going to happen, and then it's just about your position when the combat starts. But it doesn't halt the game if you fail or don't fail this kind of perception roll. Rolling for information is more rolling for information to keep the game going. And there's this thing I have, or I say, so information you can generally divide into 3 categories, right? You can divide information into crucial information. Nothing that is vital should ever be behind a roll or having a specific thing that needs to happen. Yes, but I'm going to go a step further. I say it's not just vital things, right? So there are 3 levels in general of information. The first is crucial information or vital information. If the players don't have this information, the adventure cannot continue. Right? That's the definition of crucial information. The secret door that leads into the dungeon. Or the password that lets them get into the cultist's lair. The one, or I don't know, right? There's a lot of these possibilities. So do not roll for this crucial information, because if all the players fail, even with dogpiling, then you have to be prepared that the adventure will just die right then and there. Like what happened with us in our Call of Cthulhu game, right? Then the GM had to be like, you know what, those rolls you just did, we just wasted 5 minutes on them. Doesn't matter, you find the book anyway, right? That kind of idea. The next level of information is, I forgot what I named it. Useful, I guess. Useful information, practical information, which is information that gives more context to the choices players have, or that gives them more choices, right? So a very basic thing is like you're at in a dungeon, in a corridor, at an intersection. At first glance, both ways, left and right, look exactly the same, but you can give the players some information that makes these two paths slightly different. And then when they make a choice of which path to follow, they are not just randomly flipping a coin saying left or right. It's not some arbitrary decision. They are making an informed decision. Maybe they can hear the flowing of water down the right path, and they can like smell the stench of rotting and death down the left path, right? It's not a lot of information, but it is enough for them to say, hold on. That stench of rotting, that might be undead. We kind of found a ghoul earlier in the dungeon. That sounds like where a lot of ghouls will be. We don't want to go down there. Let's go down the other path with the flowing water, right? Let's see what's down there. And that makes their choice informed. It gives them agency. And if you gate such information behind a role, it literally takes away player agency, right? It makes their choices arbitrary and random. The one room smells of cooking food. Yeah, something like that, right? Or you can hear snippets on conversation through this door, and you can hear nothing through the other door. Even that is information, right? That gives you some choice, some information on choice. The third level of choice of information. Oh, I think I named this level ancillary. Doesn't matter. The third level of information is fluff information, right? Things like lore, some background, some nice to know things that don't necessarily impact gameplay, impact the story, but their flavor, their color. And if you take away this information behind a role, then your world becomes very bland. The environments, the stories become very bland, and the players find less opportunities to connect their characters to the world. Right? If there's a mural of some sort of religious scene happening, and then the cleric can say, you know what? I recognize this from a story from my religion, right? Then that helps the player connect the character to the world and give them a small moment of spotlight. And if you then say, oh, none of you pass your perception check, you don't see the mural on the wall. You wouldn't phrase it like this, but like, yeah, no, you don't see anything on the wall. Then that takes away a moment that the player can have for character expression, right? So do not gate information behind roles. Just don't do it. Just give it to them. Right? Only when the players have information. And players will be starving for information. You have to remember, they are not the characters in the situation. They are sitting at a table or in front of a computer, only relying on what the GM is telling them. So give them more information than necessary so that they can make good decisions and feel like they have agency. Right? And that's really, really important. So do not gate information behind that. And that applies to this social encounter deal in the sense that gotta keep an eye on the clock real quick. Okay, I still have time. In the sense that a lot of times there's usually some sort of empathy skill in games, right? Or like read expression or psychology or whatever the game calls it, right? Check vibes and so on. And that does both of these things. That does both of these. If you fail this check, nothing bad happens. Right? But you must succeed on this check to get, some sort of insight. Exactly. You must succeed on this check in order to gain information to make more informed decisions of how to proceed in this social encounter. Right? So if the player asks like, can I see what this guard might be afraid of? Do I think this guard might be susceptible to threats of physical harm? Yeah. And then the GM says, give me an insight check. And then you roll insight check and you fail. And the GM says, well, you have no idea. You just gotta, feel around in the dark and drag out this social scene for another hour, trying out different things carefully. But other than that, you're perfectly fine. Nothing bad happens, right? The guard doesn't notice you eyeing him up and down and looking very strangely or so. No, it just kind of continues to say, you cannot pass. What did that achieve? Not only did that not open a new door, it closed a door for the players. Right? Because now the players are like, I don't have any information to know how to proceed. I had an idea, physical harm, right? Threat of physical harm. I wanted to pursue this, but now this door is closed. It's not fully closed. I can still try to intimidate the guard, sure. But at this point, it becomes another random decision, right? Just flip the coin. Yeah, sure, whatever. Bleh, I don't care anymore. And so give the players this information for free. If they ask for it, don't just info dump them. Don't just say, oh, the guard looks really tough and seems like he has been in a couple of battles and has some scars to prove it, blah, blah. No. Don't do that, right? If the player asks, does this dude seem susceptible to physical harm? Then you can say, well, actually, looks quite tough. He already has some scars on his face and looks like he's a bit grizzled, so probably not, right? And then the player can say, all right, now I know. And if they still want to pursue threats of physical harm, well, now this is an informed decision. And if the GM then says, okay, but you get a penalty on your roll, then the player can say, okay, I understand why I get this penalty. But I went into the roll fully expecting something like this. And that lowers the trust threshold. And we're back to point number one, right? So it all comes down to the GM organizing relevant, actionable information and then giving this information to the players when they ask about it. And then the players can take this information and actionize on it, right? Make it actionable themselves and say, right, this path might not work, but I'm out of ideas. I'm going to intimidate this guy anyway, right? And then it's like, yeah, okay, but, penalty on the roll. And the player's like, yes, I know, I understand. Because you told me that this guy is probably not susceptible to it. And that's really all it is. Right? That's all it is. It doesn't take any new mechanics. It doesn't need like a whole game system or structure for it. All it is organizing your information as a GM, giving it to the players, and then they can make informed choices. That's it. And then using this as a baseline, now you can build mechanics around it if you want, right? Attach numbers or die rolls or whatever. A lot of systems, what they do, they have a reaction roll, for example, right? When you first encounter and talk to an NPC, the GM rolls on a reaction table on a reaction table and sees, maybe modified by the speaker's charisma or whatever. And then they sees, oh, how is this? What's the attitude of this person, right? Are they hostile? Are they unhelpful? Are they guarded or wary? Are they friendly and open? Are they helpful, right? And this gives you a baseline idea of what the NPC will do. And it gives you like the like a first step of where this social encounter can lead. I'm not sure I 100% agree with this, but I have to think about it some more. Not the hiding information behind rolls. The not hiding information behind rolls. Oh. So. Okay, so the thing with. It's also. So the whole hiding information behind rolls has led to a lot of. Whoops. Drop some food. Hold on. Has led to a lot of play styles that build upon this thing. So one big example is traps, right? Traps are usually information that is hidden behind a roll. Do you give players the information that the trap exists or not? And I say yes. Yes, you do give them the information. Because a trap in a game, in a role-playing game, a trap is like a puzzle, right? Now, the goal of the puzzle is not, do I find the puzzle? The goal of the puzzle is, now that I have it, can I solve it? All right. So you tell the players that there's a trap. You don't have to say, you enter the corridor, boom, there's a trap. You can hint at it. You can say, you notice these weird holes in the walls, or there's blood splatters everywhere here for some reason, right? Or whatever. Or you make traps consistent, like every single door has the same trap in it, and the bottom threshold or something, right? And the players will run into the first one, and then they will check the second one, find the trap, check the third one, find the trap, and be okay, every single door has this trap. And then you can deal with it. You can throw like a curveball at them and say, oh, now you come to this door, that trap has already been triggered. And players go, huh, we expected there to be a trap, but now it's triggered? Wait, what? And that makes things more interesting, right? And again, it gives them more agency. If they know a trap is there, then they now have a choice of how to deal with it. They can try to rush through it. They can try to trigger it intentionally while staying out of range. They can try to find a way to disable it. They can say, let's turn around and go another path. They can lure a monster into it. Whatever, right? It gives them choices. But they only have these choices if they know that the trap exists in the first place. And this is with a lot of things, like a lot of it is very much gotcha, right? A lot of this hiding information behind rolls. Okay, an exception. There are exceptions to everything. Sure, you might not want to reveal everything, and when I say reveal everything, again, like with the example of the guard, it doesn't mean as soon as the players step into the room, give them all the information at once. No, the players have to specifically ask for it or interact with wherever this information is, right? So they step into a room and there's, I don't know, table with a couple drawers, a bookcase, a journal somewhere, and like, oh, a painting on the wall. And then the player might ask, I want to examine the painting on the wall. Then you describe to them what they see on the painting. And the player says, actually, I want to see if I can remove the painting from the wall. And then, if they say this, then you tell them, oh yeah, wait, it doesn't actually come off, right? It's attached weirdly, but it like, you can move it, jiggle it a little bit, but it doesn't come off. Then the player can say, okay, there's something strange with this painting. You don't tell them that right away. You tell them that if they ask for it or interact with it in a way that would give them this information. But you don't just roll for it. It's not the player says, I want to look at the painting. And then it's like, give me a search check. Oh, you find out that the painting is actually hiding a hidden wall safe. It's, that is, it doesn't. So that actually takes the players out of the game, out of the story, right? Because they are cushioned by this layer of separation, and they don't have to work for it. I'm still saying, sure, they have to work for it. They have to be in there. But if they ask a question that they can reasonably have the answer to, give it to them, right? And then you might give a bonus based on character skill. Things like if a person with high insight tries to study the guard, right? then maybe it's like, oh, is this guard, will he be intimidated by threats of physical violence? I have a high insight, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And then the GM says, yeah, no, he looks pretty tough and grizzled and has a couple of scars from like past battles. But your high insight gives you a little bonus info that you didn't ask for, but your character would have gotten. Yeah? That's how you can then use character skill in here. Or a good perception roll or something. It's like you step into a room, and then if a character has good perception, they automatically discover that something is off with the painting without having to intentionally interact with it, right? Just because the character skill is so high. Elves, in fact, work like this in older editions of D&D. Secret doors, you can find secret doors just by walking past them because of, I don't know, draft, or you just happen to notice a gap in the stonework or whatever. Normally, people have a 1 in 6 chance to find a secret door or a hidden door. Elves have a higher chance, something like a 2 in 6 to find a secret door and a 3 in 6 to find a hidden door, right? So that just means elves have better senses, finer senses, and that just allows them to notice that there's a secret door there. And again, knowing that there's a secret door somewhere still means that you have to figure out how to open it, right? That then becomes the puzzle. But this now gives the players a choice of saying, oh, hey, there's a secret door here. Do we try to unravel its puzzle? Do we try to find a way through? Or are we under time pressure because, the cultists are starting the ritual right now, TikTok, right? And they're down that way, not this way. So we'll leave this door for later. Right? But that now becomes an interesting choice that the players can have. And this is what I mean by giving the players the information. And I have run several games like this now, especially mystery games, where if the player asks for something, I give them the info. Unless the info is specifically hidden or something where they might need to check. Like if they find a journal, right, that they are looking for. It's like, oh, I checked the drawers. Yeah, you find this journal. Okay. I get the journal, but then if you want to read it, well, maybe it's written in some strange language. Now you can check character skills and such, right? Or now you can make a side quest of, oh, we need to find someone who speaks this language. But again, that becomes a choice that the players can have and gives them more options, more paths forward. So that's what I mean with giving them information and giving them choice. And I can see it working. I'm still running through a bunch of scenarios in my head. Yeah, like obviously at the end of the day, it needs to be judged case by case. All right? Maybe in some particular case, it could be really good to have players roll for the information for any number of reasons. But I'm looking at this as a general attitude toward running the game. And I feel like right now, the general attitude is to starve the players of info and ask for these no consequence rolls just to allow them to play the game, basically. And I don't agree with that. And I know I'm not alone in this, actually. This is not my idea initially. I heard it from other places, and I have now refined it into this. But yeah, this is essentially a shift in mindset, right? So have information that the players can use and make choices about, and then give them this information. I'm going to have to take off. Have a great rest of stream. Thank you. I'm also going to end soon, actually. You know what? It's almost 2. Yeah, I have class soon, and I need to still prepare something. So I do think I am going to call it here as well. We've been going for about 3 hours. Yeah. And I think we've had a big discussion and stuff on this that came to its conclusion. Yeah. Lots of tangents today. Okay, let me stop this. Let me turn this on. Okay. And let me try to find someone. But yeah, thank you for hanging out, Awkward Pain. It was very nice having you here. And having this discussion. Let's see. What is... Can I... raid here? Last time I tried to raid, raids were disabled, so... Yeah, okay. Disabled raids. Okay. We gotta find someone else. Who is on right now? No. Oh my goodness. Not a lot of people on. Huh. Yeah, no, I don't. Oh. Let's just okay. I know we've raided a bunch of times, but you know what? Why not? It's just nice going there. We can raid Heihan again. And they're playing Fields of Mystery, so very, very chill game. Probably not a bad thing to raid into. Okay. Raid. Did I get the name right? Got the name right. Okay, yeah. So thank you all for being here. We had a lot of like very off rails discussions and tangents today, but you know, why not? That's why I do this. It's called design and discussion. Well, it's not actually called that. I just decided on that yesterday. But yeah, thank you all for being here. I might do more tabletop stuff now that I've done it again. It's like, yeah, this is actually what my channel is about. So I used to do this every single week. But yeah, this is tabletop role-playing games is what my channel is actually for. So yeah, thank you all for coming by. I should be back on Thursday with Baldur's Gate 2. Yeah, hopefully a longer stream then. And yeah, I'm hopefully gonna see you soon. Yeah, take care, everyone. I appreciate you all being here. Stay hydrated, and bye-bye.